Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 156 of Analyzing Evil, featuring the three main antagonists of Far Cry 3, Vas Montenegro, Citra Telumai, and Hoyt Volker. In Far Cry 3, we find a world of strife, hardship, and misery that presents us with a story that's just as harrowing as it is engaging. The tale of a man attempting to rescue his friends from the clutches of the sinisterly twisted forces that are ravaging this island paradise on all fronts. While Citra and Hoyt are the central antagonists of this story, Vas has become a larger-than-life villain that's revered as one of the greatest to ever grace the video game medium, and that praise is definitely deserved. With that in mind, this video is more so an analysis of Vas than it is a triple analysis of all three of these characters. Though because I'll be discussing their stories and characters throughout different points in this video, I feel that what we talk about here will suffice as an analysis of all three. So in this video, we're going to be exploring much of the information we're given about these three that we can find in Far Cry 3, the Far Cry 6 DLC Vas Insanity, the Far Cry Experience, and the Far Cry Rite of Passage comic, so we might better understand all the evil that occurs in this story. Now without further ado, let's begin. Growing up amongst the Rakyat on the Rook Islands, Vas and Citra were given access to all the luxury one typically associates with island living: white sandy beaches, plenty of fresh air and food, and a vibrant culture. As wonderful as all that may be, the Rook Islands, like many a small island nation, has a sordid history of strife and hardship that severely impacted the lives of the island's natives. In the 15th century, the Chinese explorer Zheng He discovered the islands and swiftly claimed them as his own, in the process enslaving the populace and forcing them to build temples and monuments to Zheng. During World War II, the Japanese set up an outpost on the Rook Islands and treated its inhabitants in much the same way that Zheng did when he ruled the Isles, and this island and its people that have been abused for going on 6 centuries now would only be forced to suffer more hardship as time marched on. In between these eras and after World War II, criminals and pirates would come and go, which made the Rook Islands a land that was continually being taken advantage of by anyone with the capability to do so. So by the time Vas was born circa 1984, the Rook Islands were beautiful, yet incredibly poor, and Vas was raised in an environment that was filled with injustice, violence, and daily hardship. While growing up in poor conditions immediately impacts a person's growth, it's more so the people around you that dictate what kind of person you'll mature into, and for Vas, it would be his sister Citra that played the largest part in transforming him into the maniac we find in this story. If we take Vas's line in the Insanity DLC as the truth, that line being that his and Citra's mother never wanted children, we can assume that Vas and Citra's mother was likely an absent caregiver, and their father may or may not have been in the picture. With that in mind, it makes sense to claim that Vas and Citra were all that either of them truly had, which brought them closer together than an average brother-sister bond would have. Now, their intimate bond is important, but in order to understand just how impactful Citra was on Vas's upbringing, we need to keep in mind that at some point, Citra's main goal became the re-establishment of Ratkia hegemony over the Rook Islands by coupling herself with a legendary warrior that would then result in the birth of an even greater warrior who would eliminate the foreigners who had desecrated their land and lead them to glory and prosperity. And originally, she planned to have Vas take on this role, which required the two of them to enter into an incestuous relationship, which they eventually did. Now, we have no way of knowing whether or not Vas was seduced by Citra, or he fell in love with her of his own accord due to their already close relationship. But either way, Citra's ambitions were seemingly secured through her brother, and because Vas was more or less just an extension of Citra's will following her discovery of the warrior prophecy, all of who Vas was in the early stages of his life, he dedicated to her, and it was even on Citra's orders that he took his first life. With that in mind, if Vas was essentially Citra's plaything, why did he become the psychotic mess that he is in this story? Because Citra is arguably more insane than Vas is. While both Vas and Citra grew up surrounded by reminders of the country that colonizers and criminals destroyed before they were even a thought, it affected Citra far more than it ever did Vas. When people are forced to witness or endure extensive hardship when they're younger, sometimes that can cause them to form any number of different disorders out of their trauma, or more appropriately, out of another disorder, PTSD. Both Vas and Citra developed antisocial personality disorder due to a combination of poor living conditions, as well as a subpar and perhaps even abusive familial situation, and the constant traumatic events they witnessed or experienced caused both of them to develop this disorder, and both would later go on to embody different forms of ASPD, psychopathy, and sociopathy. While the association between psychopathy and ASPD is still debated on to this day, many mental health experts classify psychopathy as a severe form of ASPD, and Citra is a prime example of a psychopath, whereas Vas also embodies a severe case of ASPD, but one that doesn't quite reach the level of psychopathy, and he is best referred to as a sociopath, a term that has become synonymous with ASPD. To further emphasize how this disorder applies to both Vas and Citra's personalities, let's take a look at the symptoms associated with ASPD, and for anyone curious, I'm pulling these symptoms from the Mayo Clinic's website, a link to which you can find down below. Symptoms of antisocial personality disorder include repeatedly ignoring right and wrong, telling lies to take advantage of others, not being sensitive to or respectful of others, using charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or pleasure, having a sense of superiority and being extremely opinionated, having problems with the law, including criminal behavior, being hostile, aggressive, violent, or threatening to others, feeling no guilt about harming others, doing dangerous things with no regard for the safety of self or others, and being irresponsible and failing to fulfill work or financial responsibilities. Additionally, adults with antisocial personality disorder usually show symptoms of conduct disorder before the age of 15. Symptoms of conduct disorder include serious, ongoing behavior problems, such as aggression toward people and animals, destruction of property, lying and dishonesty, theft, and serious violation of rules. Now, most of these things apply to both Voss and Citra, but to understand why Voss is a sociopath and Citra is a psychopath, we need to discuss the differences between these two people, as well as these two disorders. Now, the main difference between a sociopath and a psychopath isn't necessarily that a psychopath is more intelligent than a sociopath, but that a psychopath is able to quell their emotions and impulses to a certain degree, whereas a sociopath has much more difficulty doing so, which allows the psychopath to think clearer, which then enables them to better maintain relationships, project a sense of normalcy to other people, and more thoroughly plan out any of the various criminal endeavors they aim to undertake. I believe an apt analogy for these differences would be to compare a sociopath and a psychopath to a starving predator and a well-fed predator respectively. While a starving predator is liable to act recklessly and indiscriminately when hunting for food due to the intense hunger clouding its mind, a predator that is regularly able to obtain food won't have that handicap affecting their decisions and will therefore hunt for its prey in a more methodical way. For the sociopath, that hunger manifests in the form of instability, minds that are plagued by impulses that for one reason or another they're unable to control on a regular basis. Psychopaths, on the other hand, are able to maintain a certain degree of mental stability and are thus less likely to take risks or behave erratically when engaging in nefarious activities. Now, if we continue to evaluate the starving versus well-fed predator example, you'll find that we can discern the different levels of danger that a sociopath presents when compared to a psychopath through this analogy as well. Because a starving predator is more likely to strike at its target based off its incessant hunger, despite the circumstances or downsides to doing so, when faced with a starving predator, their prey has to contend with the ferocity of their typically unexpected, yet spur-of-the-moment assaults, an assault that the prey may not be aware of initially, but one that has a certain amount of predictability associated with it. As if a hunger-crazed predator is charging at you without much thought put into their approach, you can at least see them coming and try to avoid them as best you can. When being hunted by a well-fed predator, their prey might not even be aware that they're being hunted, as this predator will be more methodical and careful in its approach to capturing and killing its prey, and an unseen threat is always far more difficult to combat when compared to a threat that presents itself to you blatantly. Now, sociopaths aren't always reckless, and neither is a starving predator, as both are more than capable of putting some thought into any murderous actions they aim to take. However, their instability or hunger significantly dampens their ability to do so, and it makes it so they're more likely to behave irrationally rather than rationally. Similarly, a psychopath and a well-fed predator are also capable of acting irrationally when pursuing their intended targets. However, their comparably higher levels of stability or lessened hunger pains allows them to think clearer and more effectively so they can carefully pursue their prey, which is both less risky for the psychopath or predator and also results in a higher rate of success when compared to the sociopaths and starving predators in all aspects of their illicit or murderous endeavors. At the end of the day, they're both still predators. However, one is clearly less stable and unpredictable, whereas the other is much more composed and highly methodical. And the difference between Voss and Citra in this regard is reflected in their personalities and actions. Voss is impulsive, reckless, high-strung, and quick to anger, traits that make him an unhinged and chaotic individual that's liable to murder anyone for any reason. Citra, on the other hand, while just as bloodthirsty and cruel, is far more organized, meticulous, and level-headed. She still has anger issues, but as far as long-term planning and overall mental clarity is concerned, she has the edge over Voss, which allows us to assign her the far more dangerous diagnosis of a psychopath. And it also allows us to make a rather insidious claim that Citra is the most to blame for Voss's transformation into a sociopath. Now, Citra wasn't the initial cause of Voss's formation of ASPD, as just like his sister, it was his overall environment that caused him to form this disorder. However, I'm willing to bet that Voss's ASPD was relatively mild when compared to his sister's, and it was his sister's machinations that significantly amplified this disorder within Voss. Why I believe this is the case is for one very specific reason, because the only reason Voss took the path he did in life is because his sister was holding his hand and pulling him down that path. For the majority of his young life, Voss was entirely beholden to the will of his sister, the woman who wanted to make him into a legendary warrior that could be the catalyst for the Ratkia's revenge against the foreign powers that had desecrated their land. And this was the only thing that was ever on Citra's mind. Nothing else in the entire world mattered more to Citra than her plan did. It didn't matter how many foreign scum or even Ratkia died in the process. All that mattered was the end goal of once again making the Rook Islands the land of the Ratkia, and the Ratkia only. And she only cared for those around her so far as they could accomplish that goal. And because Voss was the most important keystone in her plans for the future, Voss was forced to take the brunt of her abuses in the most debilitating ways possible. Aside from the fact that Citra made herself the object of Voss's affections and likely heavily manipulated him in several ways off this connection alone, we also know that the first time Voss killed was for his sister. And though Voss might have always become a killer regardless of his sister's influence, it still stands that Voss initially started his love affair with murder because of his sister. It would be one thing if Voss had to kill someone to defend his sister, and that could have been why he first killed someone. But from what we know of Voss and Citra's relationship, it's more than likely that he was told to kill someone that Citra needed gone, for whatever reason. And from here, Voss only went deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, as Citra ordered him to commit murders for her sake and the sake of the Ratkia. Now, Citra might have put Voss on the course to becoming the psychotic trigger-happy maniac we see in this story, but Citra actually wasn't the one who drove him over the edge. That honor goes to Hoyt Volker. Hoyt shares many similarities with the Ratkiat's most famous pair of siblings, notably in his designation as a psychopath who also suffered a tragic upbringing. We were given this excerpt on Hoyt's background on the Ubisoft website around 2012. After a brutal upbringing by his father, a South African mining boss, Hoyt Volker swore to outdo him. As an adult, he maneuvered to the head of a consortium of pirates by undercutting the boss politically and then literally, finishing him off in front of his family. Today, he runs his operations out of Rook Islands and commands his own private army of bloodthirsty mercenaries. This is the man who brought the drugs to the Rook Islands that warped Voss's mind even further than it already had been. The person that gave Voss the opportunity to release himself from his sister's grasp by promising him a place by his side in his newly founded kingdom of decadence and debauchery. And Hoyt, at the time this story begins, is the latest in a long line of people who sought to abuse the Rook Islands for their own gain. And he's a man whose brutality and cruelty equals and even exceeds that of his subordinate Voss at times. Like Citra, Hoyt is clearly composed enough to lead a large-scale organization. And though he's just as brazenly violent as Voss, he's essentially a mirror to Citra, as he's the psychopathic head of the organization looking to eradicate the Ratkia and dominate the Rook Islands, while Citra is the psychopathic head of a warrior cult that's looking to save the Ratkia from him. Now, Voss is a murderous and psychotic maniac, but from what we've learned so far about the people who made him into who he is, we can classify the story of Voss Montenegro as more of a tragedy than anything. Voss is cruel, sadistic, full of impulsive rage, and dangerously unhinged. And while it would make sense to point to his anger issues and sadism as the primary reasons why he acts the way he does in this story, there's a much more appropriate way to view Voss's character. In an interview with Michael Mando, we're given the following brilliant insight into how Voss's character should be interpreted. This is an excellent way to describe Voss's character, and from what we know about Voss's early manipulation by Citra, it makes sense that a man who lost his childhood innocence before he even became a man would be emotionally stunted and immature. And when you add in the extensive use of multiple different kinds of drugs, you find yourself with a child in a man's body who's dipping in and out of reality that doesn't realize half the time what he's doing or what's even real. A man who's trying to find deeper meaning in the world around him, who's unable to find the clarity he craves due to the turmoil in his soul. With this in mind, it makes sense why Voss is so whimsically murderous. He's like a kid running rampant at a carnival, except there are no rides at Voss's carnival, only the lives of others, and he runs from person to toy with them in any sadistic way that he can think of. And he typically indulges in both psychological and physical torture in order to extract as much fun from their suffering as he possibly can. And just like a child, Voss has a vague sense of empathy so far as his own emotions are concerned, but he's wholly incapable of applying the same sentiment to the hundreds of others that he's tortured or killed.
Shut up! Don't cry! Okay? Do not beg! The choices you have made in your life have brought you here.
What is it? What is it?
Man, back up a little bit. It's gonna blow up.
Oh.
Back up.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, be quiet, let me focus. Hello. And welcome to my show. Today we do our first torture. I have a little surprise for you. Come with me. What is that? No. What are you doing with that? Be quiet, Chris. What? No, Open wide, Chris! Open wide! Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Wow. God. Chris, you haven't been flossing, huh? That's really bad. You know that, huh? I don't floss. You should always floss. This is fucking embarrassing. Do you have my fucking water? Oh, fuck. What? I forgot the water. I'll get it next time, okay? Just one thing. Don't move. What? Open your mouth. Water? Yeah, water. Don't move, okay? Be very careful. I don't want you to hurt yourself. What? Careful. What is this? Careful your nose. What is this? It's water. What are you doing? Oh my God! Spiders, I hate this shit! Oh, I can feel it on my eye! Oh, God!
Oh my God, there's so many of them, man. It's that psycho.
This shit gets old and buried really fast.
We're gonna free the others, and then we're going home.
Grant!
No! Stay with me, Grant! Please, don't die! Hold on, Grant, hold on!
You're pretty much
Oh God!
You're pretty much home.
No!
And I mean, you wanna
Grant! Grant!
I like that. No, I respect that. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds. And if this jungle doesn't eat you up alive, I will. Go. You f***ing tough! I said get the f*** out of here, you chicken! Run, Forrest! Run! You're angry, Jason. You are angry. Okay, I get that. I get it. I mean, without family, who there was a time where I'd do anything for my sister. You know, first time I ever killed was for my sister. It was not enough for her. No, please. You see, the thing about our loved ones, right? Our f***ing loved ones! They come and they blindside you every f***ing time. So they say to me, they say, Voss, who the f*** is it going to be? Them or me? Me or them? like, you know, like they f***ing think that I need to make a choice. By the way, this lighter really sucks. You know, so much for poetics. Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again, expecting change. That is crazy. But the first time somebody told me that, I don't know, I thought they were me, so boom, I shot them. The thing is, okay, he was right. And then I started seeing it everywhere I looked. Everywhere I looked, all these pricks. Everywhere I looked, doing the exact same thing. Over and over and over and over and over again. Thinking, this time, he's gonna be different. No, please. This time, he's gonna be different. I'm sorry. I don't like the way you are looking at me. Okay? You have a problem in your head. Do you think I'm you? Do you think I'm lying? You, okay? You. It's okay, man. I'm gonna chill, hermano. I'm gonna chill. The thing is, all right? The thing is, I killed you once already. And it's not like I am crazy. It's okay. It's like water under the bridge. Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Jesus. No. What?
We'll head along the river, clear out the natives in one sweep, and set up camp. Next week. Yes?
You want to take the land from the natives?
Are you? Yes. If we want to expand faster, then it...
You want to take the land from the natives? Yes?
Correct?
Okay, where were you born?
Here.
You?
Here.
Can I borrow your gun? Thank you.
But Hoyt...
It's okay, relax. Hermano, we are the natives.
Tell me, why do we do the same thing
No, he
over
didn't.
and over, thinking the result will suddenly be different? That, my children, is the very definition of insanity.
Copycat, mother.
Day, my churches, we will send our missionaries to every corner of God's great and wonderful world. We will find those
I don't know, God needs money, huh?
darkness and show them the light of our...
Hey, wake up. Shoot me. I want to see if I can dodge the bullet. Honey, I'm home. You know, the sun was particularly glorious today.
Stay.
You find them beautiful?
Was?
Not you. You. It's a yes or no question. Usually when I'm in my house, when I ask somebody a question, I expect them to answer me.
I don't know who the you think you are.
I don't know either. I'm gonna play a little game with you, okay? Now don't move. Hey, don't you move now. I've done this before, okay? Don't you move. Stay where you are. I told him not to move. I was only gonna graze his ear.
Always putting on a show, aren't you?
Lay on the bed.
Oh, do you find me beautiful?
Do you think I'm scared of you? You think I'm f***ing scared
Do
of you?
it, Vas.
I can do it right now.
Oh, let's see.
Stop touching me!
Oh, do it, Vas.
Stop
Let's do it. Oh, I dare you to do it. Fucking do it. Yes.
To further emphasize what kind of person Voss has become, when we receive another philosophical take on his story in the first issue of the Rite of Passage comic, here Anton Castillo is using Voss's story to teach his son a lesson. Imagine a young man and his sister in an island paradise, free as deer. Imagine that peace. This young man lived in a fragile world, innocence like thin glass ready to break, and his spirit was just as fragile. There was a need in him, the same need I see in you, son. That conflict within that man, it was exploited, pried apart by people looking for that weakness in him. It can happen so fast, son. Ruin. Is he real, this man? Real enough? What happened to him? He fell and continued to fall. He tried to smother the voices inside himself. He failed. Some may come to you sensing a need in you, like fresh blood on a kill to a predator. That young man, the predators came for him. If someone came to you wanting you to betray me, would you? Papa, of course not. Never. Never. A dangerous word to use, son. We can be made to do anything if we are not careful. Beware the arrogance of thinking you are any different. That young man I mentioned, he was arrogant. He did not realize what he was becoming. That need in him, the chaos, it ruled him and allowed him to be ruled. He thought he could never become what he became, until never left him forever. This man became the beast of his own people. He thought the power would grant him peace, but he was wrong. The worst suffering comes to someone at war with himself. It's like being ripped apart. And yes, Voss was at war with 3 different people within himself. The man he wanted to be, the man Citra wanted him to be, and the man that Hoyt promised him he could be. In the end, Voss wasn't able to quell the storm raging within him. He wasn't able to make sense of who he truly was, or what he truly wanted, and it was the powers that be pushing and pulling him in every direction that ensured his final confrontation with Jason Brody would be a psychotic whirl of violence and whimsy as Voss continued to embody his treasured definition of insanity. However, it would seem that Voss managed to survive despite the odds stacked against him, and though he appears to embody but a shadow of the madness he once possessed, it would seem that Voss is still liable to do the same thing that led him towards insanity once again. A man on a sunny beach, talking to a tennis ball, who might actually be at peace in his own world that's ruled by his fractured mind. So with all that we've discussed about Voss, Citra, and Hoyt. What is there to say about these villains and all the evil that they sow in this story? Citra and Hoyt are two sides of the same coin. Two people who were forced to endure suffering in their youth that made it their life's work to defy that suffering and prove to those who inflicted it upon them that they are mightier than the forces that destroyed their lives. People who ensured the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands of people in the process. Voss is a certified maniac who was working at different points in his life to further the aims of these two flesh-clad demons, the tool of two greater evils, whose mind was destroyed by the people he trusted to silence the chaos constantly roiling within him, but who ultimately led him down a path to further insanity that shattered his mind. And though Voss is responsible for the deaths of an untold amount of people and was complicit in two separate villainous plots, when we keep in mind all the information we've covered, can we really say that Voss is an evil man? After all, who is to blame for the choices he made? Citra, who let herself be consumed by anger and hatred until she was transformed into a mad goddess of revenge that then used her brother as a veritable sword to smite her foes with. Hoyt, who manipulated Voss with drugs and promises of wealth and power so he might turn the Ratkia to his cause and use them to further his nefarious aims. Or Voss, the man who wouldn't be who he is in this story if it weren't for these two villains. I believe the answer to that is that Voss is not wholly accountable for everything he's done, and it should be Hoyt and Citra who we blame the most for all the misery in this story. However, that doesn't mean that Voss should necessarily be forgiven for his crimes. Should the man Voss was at the time of his supposed death been given any mercy? Well, anyone is capable of redemption, so long as there are people willing to forgive them. And perhaps an appropriate punishment for Voss, if he had been caught by the authorities, would have been to remand him to a mental health care facility. However, it's more than fair to argue that he was lucid enough when he was committing the hundreds of crimes he's committed, and I can't blame any of his victims' loved ones for pursuing the ultimate punishment for him. So yes, Voss might be an evil man. After all, his entire existence was geared towards committing atrocities on a near daily basis. But we have to remind ourselves that all of the choices Voss made in this regard were influenced by others. And if he had been allowed to become his own man unburdened by the manipulation of outside forces, he may very well have never taken the path he took. So even if we can't forgive Voss, we can certainly feel sorry for him. A man whose story is as tragic as the story of his people. And perhaps instead of blaming him, we should look to the evils that created the events of this story. The greed of foreign conquerors who sought to exploit the land of the Ratkia for their own gain, at the expense of each and every soul that called these islands home. Men and women who created the perfect conditions for a man like Hoyt Volker to take further advantage of these people, and for a woman like Citra to blossom out of the hatred that was created by these scoundrels who ruined her life and the lives of countless others. Even so, even if we can sympathize with these characters and their stories, and decry the evil that led to the formation of the evil within them, a person's choices are still their own. And though one's insanity and the circumstances that led them to becoming insane might allow us to forgive some of those choices, we can't ignore the fact that much of the tragic events in this story were born out of three people's conscious decisions to ignore any sense of virtue and embrace evil. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on these characters? Let me know down below, and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured in a future episode while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to all of my subscribers, to my patrons, and to anyone who's decided to honor me with a super thank, and a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and subreddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.